There are some big mistakes that will lose people money in the Google Ads world of ecom. I'm going to tell you what they are. I'm going to tell you how they avoid them. Let's jump right in. When it comes to targeting, prioritizing the wrong targeting can make all the difference. What a lot of people do is they'll think they have a phenomenal product or a well built out store, whatever it is, and they'll just try to go for the broadest, coldest type of traffic, thinking they can scale into it, make a ton of money. What we do for our clients, and even in our own store accounts, is we start with the most specific type of traffic and then build outwards. We have a strategy called the pyramid of converting traffic. It's always about building a strong foundation and then going upwards. When I say upwards, it means going into colder traffic that you have to get down funnel to actually buy the product. We want to make sure that we're going after people who are more inclined to buy because they already have the intention of buying, which really comes down to type of keywords that you're targeting. So type of keywords can be very, very important. The one thing I want to mention is not letting your ego lead you. I mentioned this on like the, having a great product side of things. If you go in a little bit delusional and just feel like you've set things up great and it's going to work out, you're not going to make, very much money. If anything, you might lose money. The biggest thing to do is really give yourself the highest chance of success by fixating on variables and making sure that they are the most likely to convert variables, basically, like the types of traffic that you might go after, the types of assets you're using assets that might be working on other platforms, and then making versions of them for Google. Whatever it is, you always want to give yourself the most chance to succeed. So very, very important, not letting your ego lead you there. Next thing is going to be starting specific, then go broad. We already mentioned this a bit. This is most prevalent when it comes to the types of keywords you're going after. When it comes to keywords, not only are there different types of keywords you can go after and different intentions of people buying, but there's also different settings you can use. In other videos, we talk about broad match, phrase match, exact match. These are the settings you use on your keywords to allow Google to have more flexibility. When it comes to Google's flexibility, the more flexibility they have, the faster they're going to spend your money. So we generally want to keep it kind of in the middle, not super tight like exact match where you're only going after the exact term that you want to show for, but something like phrase match where not only are you going to go after the terms you feel are going to convert that are longer tail, but it also has a little bit of room to show you for terms that are either similar to that term or terms that include that term. So very important to start specific with those terms. And as you see the conversion level of those, then you jump to the next step and the next step and the next step. Next is going to be do not be lazy with your build. Most people will set up campaigns with the least amount of effort and just feel they're going to work. Take the time you need to take, sit down for a couple hours, build the ads outright, write good ad copy, make sure you do the right keyword research, do the math. We talked about that in other videos, doing the math behind the keywords you're going to go after. Once again, this comes down to giving yourself the best chance of succeeding. And it'll only happen if you spend the time and put the effort in every single variable that is around an actual campaign launching. Next is going to be location targeting. So if you're in the e-com space, location always isn't the craziest thing to fixate on because most times you're going to sell to an entire country. Most stores also will go after multi-country. So generally what we recommend is not going like worldwide or going after 5 countries or the big 5, whatever it is. We want to start with the areas that are converting for your store. So whether you have really good Shopify data or other platform data, and people are converting really well in certain states or in a certain country out of all the countries you're targeting, start with that first and expand from there. If you're only in, for example, like the US, maybe you go after, some of the bigger states that convert first and then you expand from there. It always comes down to not reinventing the wheel and going after first what's most likely to bring in the most amount of money and then expanding from there and testing the waters. So next is going to be using presence instead of interested in. This is a small setting that people don't really pay attention to because Google hides it. Google is great when it comes to hiding certain settings that allow their platform to spend more money, but not always make you more money. So when you're setting up location targeting, make sure to check off interested in, because what that is it won't only show the ads to people who are in a certain location, it'll show the ads to people who are interested in them. So for example, if somebody's interested in the US and they're in Europe and they're searching the US maybe for vacation, a lot of searches around that, it might show your product to somebody in a different country you can't even deliver to because they're interested in the location that you are targeting. So very, very, very important to only start with people who are actually in the areas you're targeting, not interested in. Next is going to be PMAX and branded. So one thing about PMAX is it will go after low funnel type traffic. If you have a high spend on Facebook or you have other channels driving in traffic and they're going to Google and searching your brand name, PMAX will generally go after that first. We consider it a necessary evil because, yeah, sure, you don't want to spend a bunch of money on pulling in your own branded traffic. In most cases, you're not going to spend a bunch of money. It'll be a fraction of the budget. But what it will do is it'll feed your PMAX, which is a very algorithm-based campaigns, the right type of data to drive into cold traffic. So although it will takes the money of the budget into the branded traffic, it'll show the PMAX campaign exactly who's buying your product, and then it'll find those people on the cold side and drive into that. We've seen much more scalability because of the amount of data that drives into it. And on top of that, we've seen it scale farther than, for example, PMAX, only go after new customers, which if you have that setting in there, it'll still go after branded. Like we've seen test after test that it'll still scale better, including the branded traffic or the low funnel traffic, than it would with using all these settings, try to avoid it, because the settings do not do what they're supposed to do yet. Maybe in the future they will, but they don't, so we avoid them. And then the last thing is on the shopping side, you can still run shopping campaigns on Google. We've tested on tons and tons of client accounts if we could scale out farther on shopping or including shopping in PMAX, and even variations of the two. We can get into different PMAX type strategy and builds in other videos. But we have seen PMAX greatly outperform shopping at many levels. So highly recommend starting with PMAX, which includes shopping and not just doing solely shopping. The last thing is wasted money on tests. So what people do a lot of the times is they get nervous and they cut tests off before they actually get what they need out of them. And there's, an easy way of doing that on the Google side, because when it comes to Google, you have a lot of variables within the actual campaign. And when you have multiple variables spending money, you're not always letting each variable get what they need to get on the data side to make proper decisions. And what people will do is they'll just turn off the whole campaign and not really dig into the data. So the biggest thing is on the front end, we're looking at front end KPIs that aren't as important as like conversion rate, ROI, things like that, but KPIs that will indicate, are we at least showing the ads to the right people? And a lot of times this can be click-through rate, right? So if you're on the search network, for example, you have a click-through rate under 2% or under 3%. Generally 2 to 3% is an okay average. 3 to 4% is a strong, good average. And then anything above like 3.5 to 4x, you're really in a good zone of getting the right type of traffic. And what it's going to tell you is the relevancy of your ads to the actual traffic you're showing the ads to. If you have a really low click-through rate, chances are you have a very poor traffic quality. And you can see on the search term report, are you actually paying for traffic that's going to be likely to convert? If you have settings in there, like we don't recommend, like starting with broad match or setting with different bidding models that might go after cheaper traffic, a lot of the times you can spend money on cheap traffic that's not even going to yield conversions. And it's going to waste your money. So when it comes to front end data, highly recommend going after making sure your click-through rate's strong. And that's going to show you, are you going to convert? And you can go from there. Next thing is going to be when to cut off tests. There's a couple different elements to this, because you can consider test a campaign, you can consider test a keyword, different demographics. When it comes to cutting off tests, you want to cut it off when you get enough data to decide it's not working. And most of the time, that's 2 to 3 times the cost per acquisition you're going after. So if you're trying to acquire a buyer at, let's say, $30 and a test spends $60 to $90 and there's still not conversions there, a lot of times you can move on and keep testing from there. Usually the 3 times mark is going to be a good sweet spot if you're looking at the higher level. If we're looking at like actual keywords within a campaign, deciding what to turn off and on, that's when you're going to be closer to the the 2x side, 2 to 3x, because you want to allow Google to show the other keywords. And if you have certain keywords that aren't converting, they might eat up budget if they keep rolling. So highly recommend when you're cutting off tests, make sure not only to look at the campaign side as an overarching level, but also go in there and look at the keyword elements, different demographic elements, pause certain keywords that might be eating up budget, and then let the other keywords pan out, because sometimes certain keywords could take all the data and then you might turn off a campaign thinking it's not working, but in reality, the keywords that didn't have a chance to run could have been the winners. So you want to make sure to isolate in that way. And the last thing is going to be optimizing before cutting. That kind of ties in what I just mentioned. Don't just turn off a campaign completely because it's not where it needs to be. Go in there, turn off the stuff that's not working, and then let the other stuff play out and see if it works or not. If it doesn't work, then you can turn off the whole campaign. If it does work, then you have a successful campaign to spend more money on. The last thing is going to be tracking accuracy. So there's 2 things here. One, not only is it going to be the accuracy of tracking coming into the account, making sure it's true to who's actually purchasing, but also making sure you're not lumping together the cold tracking and also the branded tracking as well, which is going to be low funnel, because branded tracking and branded conversions are always going to be higher ROI, and you don't want to lump that together with your warm conversions and think everything's going great. You want to make sure to have 2 standards. One's going to be the branded low funnel type traffic, making sure that's in separate campaigns. You've titled the campaigns properly. That way you can see those segmented and see if what the ROI is like. And then also the cold campaigns. And what we do a lot of the times, just to pause real quick, is we'll usually put something like cold or warm in the actual name of the campaign. That way, when we filter the campaigns we want to see, we can put cold and then see the data added up together and see what the cold ROI is like. And then also on the warm side, see what the warm ROI was like. And that way, you can keep them separate and not have it all lumped together. Last thing is going to be one primary action. So you won't see this often, but sometimes people will make the mistake of having multiple primary actions. And what that means is you have multiple conversion actions putting data into the actual campaigns. And you can see this by going to segment in segment by conversion type, and that'll show you, are there multiple conversion actions pulling in data? If there are, you could be double attributing, triple attributing sometimes, and you're going to get too much data, which will allow you to not make the right decisions. You might see things that are profitable that aren't actually profitable if you have the right data. So very important to pay attention to that. And then the last thing is just, if you have any questions, throw it in the comments. Like and subscribe if you want more content like this. We'll have plenty more videos coming out on the strategy side. Appreciate you watching and hope you have a great day.